And your slippers.
Don't encourage her.
All right, did you know that enthusiasm and joy cannot be taught? Right? Can't teach it. It has to be caught, right? So I want you to think about that when you come to church on Sunday and you come to worship the Lord. Are the people around you catching enthusiasm and joy from you for the Lord? Or are they catching something else? What kind of virus are you spreading? See? All right, so you passed the sugar along. All right, that's good. No, that's why we come together on Sunday, right? We come together to be together, to catch something from one another, right? And so you have to think about what you're catching from others. No, that's not what you should be thinking about. You should be thinking about what others are catching from you. And you can't catch something that isn't real. Can't do that. People can try for all their might to pretend something. It doesn't. Nobody catches that. You catch what's real. So when we worship the Lord together, we're doing it to Him, but it's for each other. And then we get the benefit, don't we? We get the benefit of that without having to think about it, without having to think, what am I going to get from somebody else? You just automatically get that, see, when we come together. We automatically influence each other. So that's what we have to think about. Now, something I want you to be influenced by very heavily this morning is something my granddaughter, Haley, says in her great wisdom. She's 3 now. Almost old enough to be king of Judah, right? No, not quite. No, but when she was 2, she comes over often on Sunday afternoons, and I'll try to play with her with whatever thing she's got in her mind or whatever. So I say, okay, let's do this, and she would often say, "Not yet, not yet." In other words, I'm going to do that, but first I have to finish this, or whatever it is. So it might be you need her to come sit down and eat something, or it might be let's play this game, or let's go outside, or whatever it is. And she would say, "Not yet." There's a time and a place for everything. Now, God has promised us a lot of things. And He's promised us great blessing. And He has earned a lot for us. We didn't earn anything, right? What we earned, He didn't give us. He gave us His righteousness instead. But He has given us a lot of blessing that aren't for quite yet. There's a time and a place. When the Bible calls that the day of the Lord, that day is coming, the day of the Lord, when He will be exalted by all of us, when every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, but not yet. There's a day when we will stand in the presence of God and sing His praises. We don't know when that's going to be. We don't know. But even if we were raptured today, that wouldn't be it yet, would it? There's other things that have to happen in order for that to occur. So when we read about the blessings that God promises in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, we have to remember there's a time and a place for everything. So when He prophesies blessings for His people, and He's talking to Judah at this moment, when we look at Zephaniah, so hopefully you turn to Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9 is where we're going to start today. When this starts to occur on the day of the Lord, some of those blessings were prophesied and fulfilled already for Judah when they came back from the exile. Some of those blessings were fulfilled during Jesus' lifetime. Some of those blessings, and curses too, were fulfilled when the Romans came in, and then some of those blessings were fulfilled when Israel became a nation again within a century, And then some of those blessings will occur when the Lord raptures us, and then some of those blessings will occur in the kingdom on the earth. That's where most of them will occur. Some of those blessings will not occur until the final kingdom. Got all that? Okay. So now, does the Bible clearly tell us which ones happen when? No, it doesn't. And so we have to be careful about it. Tendency in Christianity today, not the magazine, but in Christianity today, the tendency is for Christians to lump it all together, and every time the Bible promises something, claim it. The name it and claim it game, right? I see a blessing, I claim it. I'll take it. It's mine. Let's make a plaque and put it on the wall, claiming this blessing from God. Well, that's wonderful, as long as you remember that that blessing may not be for today. That's a blessing God has promised. What's the danger? Well, the danger is if you claim that promise for today and don't see it happening in your life, what might you think? Oh, it's not happening. Did he lie to me? Well, maybe not you, but people in your sphere of influence might think, oh, well, God said that. So let's say a child grows up in a household that has this promise claimed, and this promise claimed, and this promise claimed, and then they grow up thinking, yes, God said that, God said that, God said that, I believe it. But then in their lifetime, they never see it. They might start to think, somebody fed me a bill of goods. It isn't true. God said this and it didn't happen. Well, that's exactly what was happening during the second generation of the church. Second generation of the church, Christians would come around and say, oh, well, the Lord hasn't come back yet. Maybe he's never coming. Well, he is coming. You just believed something that wasn't true. You believed that he was coming right now. He never said that, did he? So as we read the prophets, we have to be careful about reading these promises into right now. Because I can write a song about a promise from God that might convince you that that promise is for you today. It happens all the time. When it was never meant for you to believe it was for today. There's a lot of things that God is saying to us, I promise you this, but not yet. It's going to happen. Something for us to look forward to. But not yet. If you get fooled into thinking that today, because I got saved last week, all the promises of God are going to be fulfilled for me right now. How are you going to feel next week? More than disillusioned? More than disappointed? Because you were told, falsely, that all the promises are for you today. Why didn't God do it that way? That's a question many people have asked down through history. Why didn't God do it this way? Because He's God, and we're not. If we could figure that out, if we could answer all the questions, we'd be God. Well, that's what the devil says, right? You will be like God. You can be God. If you can figure this out, no. God's ways are higher than our ways. He knows things we don't know. He has better ways, better plans. Be careful of thinking that you know just as well as God. Because there are many times in our lives, even in our prayer lives, when we can be tempted to tell God what He ought to be doing. This would be a good week for you to come, God. This would be a great day for you to come. It's okay to want that, okay? It's different than telling God when He should do it. Okay, there's a difference. All right. So now, as we look at the blessings, the last few verses of Zephaniah chapter 3 is God telling us about the blessings that are coming when Dad comes home. Remember we said that when your father gets home? God says, wait until I stand up. Okay? When I stand up, that's when it's all going to happen. When should that happen? Well, we should want it. We should pray for it. But we dare not tell God when that should be. Okay? Let's let God be in charge of that. And then he starts to describe the blessings that are going to come and who he's going to give it to. But remember, so some of these things are for now. Some of these things already happened. Some of these things are still to come on the great day of the Lord. With that in mind, start reading Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9. And remember that the purpose of restoration, that's what we're seeking. The purpose is restoration. Restoration with fellowship with God so he can be glorified. That's our purpose, right? Everything that we do in life, everything about our life is for the purpose of being restored to that fellowship with God. But in order for that restoration to come, what has to come before the restoration? Correction. Now, parents, actually any relationship, we have to remember that the purpose of correction is restoration. Okay? The reason we go through the whole process of correction is not because it makes us feel better, not because you're just fed up with it. Okay? The purpose is restoration. And so God, in doing all of this for Judah, is doing it to restore, but notice he doesn't restore everyone. He didn't promise to restore everyone. He promises to restore a remnant. And we want to be part of that remnant. Okay, starting with verse 9. For then I will give to the people purified lips, that all of them may call on the name of the Lord, to serve him shoulder to shoulder. So, he doesn't say they're all just going to come together and they're going to finally serve me. No, that's not what he says. He says, I will give them purified lips. He doesn't give them better words. Some people think that from the original language because they thought this meant everybody's going to speak Hebrew. No, that's not what it means. It's saying their actual lips, their mouth, their heart, their selves, they will be changed, purified, so they can actually speak praise that means something to God. God's going to give it to them. They're not going to come up with it on their own. He's going to give it to them. So that they all may call on the name of the Lord and serve him shoulder to shoulder. Those people that God brings to himself are going to serve him as one. They're going to come from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Why Ethiopia? Well, Ethiopia was kind of the limit of the world where the Jews had been dispersed to. And that was not a good thing in their minds. That was a bad thing. Okay? They had been sent very far, all over the world. They had been sent. And they were aching in their hearts, okay, because they had been dispersed because of their sin. Remember that many had come back then, later on, 70 years later, many of the Jewish people came back to restore the land, rebuild the land. Nehemiah rebuilt the walls, and then Ezra helped with starting out to rebuilding the temple, and all that was restored. But not everybody came back, did they? We know that most didn't. They stayed all over the world, but they came back for certain things. We know it was during the Feast of Pentecost that many people were there when the Holy Spirit came and spread the gospel in the languages of those people that came from this dispersion from all over the world. Well, one of the places that they had gone was Ethiopia. There are many people there today that trace their lineage back to the Jews in Ethiopia. God says that at that point they will come back. My worshipers, my dispersed ones, will bring my offerings. In that day you will feel no shame. And now he's making a contrast there from what he talked about earlier on when he said they felt no shame because they didn't know how to. They were bad, they were sinners against God, they didn't care. But now he says, no, now they're going to feel no shame because there'll be nothing to be ashamed of. He's going to heal them, take away their shame. Why? Who took their shame for them? Jesus took all the shame on the cross. Because in that day you will feel no shame because of all your deeds by which you have rebelled against me. For then I will remove from your midst your proud, exulting ones. Notice he doesn't say I remove pride. He says I remove the ones who were proud. There's a difference. I'm going to take the people who are proud away, and you will never again be haughty on my holy mountain. You will not be a proud people before me. You will be a humble people before me in Israel. Now, is Israel today a proud people or a humble people? very proud. One of the most secular nations in the world is Israel. They're not a religious people committed to God. They would not recognize Jesus, obviously, as their king. But that day they will. He says, there'll be a humble people before me. So is that taken place yet? No. I might give you a hint about the other things. Okay? The other things haven't happened yet. So, are we a people that stands before God with no shame yet? No. Even though we know God has taken the shame in Jesus, there's still shame here, isn't there? Because we're still sinning. We're still sinning. But at that day, we won't be. He'll have taken all that away. So there's a time and a place for everything. Okay, now, verse 12. Starts to talk about the remnant. I will leave among you a humble and lowly people, and they will take refuge in the name of the Lord. The remnant of Israel will do no wrong and tell no lies, nor will a deceitful tongue be found in their mouths, for they will feed and lie down with no one to make them tremble. If you think about the history of the people of Judah and all their history as a nation, they've been afraid. Always afraid. They always went to bed afraid about what was happening during the night. There was always going to be an enemy that could conquer them. There was always an enemy outside the gate. Or there was an enemy on the throne of their kingdom. There's an enemy within the gate. They were a people of fear. And they were people who lied because of their fear. They lied because they thought they had to survive. They sinned to protect themselves. God says, no, I'm going to protect a small group of people, my remnant, that I will place in there among you, who will not lie, who will not sin, because they won't have to. They won't be afraid. Why will they not be afraid? Who's their protector? God. Well, hasn't God always been there to protect them? Yes, but they didn't trust Him. But at this point, they will trust Him, and He will protect them, because He will have taken away their enemies. Verse 14, shout for joy. That's the response He wants them to have. He wants Judah and Israel, and so you can say in a sense, us, but I want you to be careful here, because the church is not Israel. Okay? We have not replaced Israel. We have not replaced Judah specifically. We have not replaced this remnant. So there are some promises that God literally has to fulfill physically on the earth yet to Israel. And He has not fulfilled them through us. It would be a lot easier if we just claimed this all for ourselves. So God's already done it for us. And so we'll just claim it spiritually for us. We're the church, we're Israel, God's done this for us. Really? Because I still have fear. I still sin. I still lie. I still have shame. I shouldn't, but I do. So has God fulfilled? No, He just metaphor. Oh, be careful. we can answer away all the promises of God and take away our confidence in Scripture. Don't do it. Okay? God says He's going to do something. He's going to do it. Let's keep reading. What does He want the response to be? Here's what the response is going to be. Okay? Remember, this is a response that's going to be. This is not for us today to do physically. It's for Israel then to do physically. Okay? Now, who is responsible for the rejoicing in Israel as a nation, typically? In Israel, typically, who did the rejoicing? Who sang the music? The women. Not much has changed. Okay. That's still kind of true, but the women were the ones who grieved. If they had professional mourners, they were the women. If they had people paid to come rejoice, I'm going to have a party, I need some people to be happy, and pay some women to come and do that. Who were the ones who did the dancing traditionally? The women. Now the men did some too, but it just didn't come off the same. It was different. All right. The women are the ones who led in the rejoicing, even in the religious festivals. The women were the ones who did it. when you read in the scripture the song of Miriam and the song of Deborah, and they were the ones who led in the worship of rejoicing. They all just did it. It was a natural thing. So he says, shout for joy, O daughter of Zion. Shout in triumph, O Israel. Rejoice and exult with all your heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. That is a huge contrast, okay? Because the women of Israel were not used to rejoicing. They were used to always leading in grief. They were used to being the ones going through the sorrow, especially during the exile, which is coming up. Remember, the exile comes after this judgment of God. They're going to be led away, and they will hang up. The Bible tells us that women will hang up their tambourines, they'll hang up the lyres. All the music instruments will be hung up because they can't play them. There's no reason to rejoice. There's only a reason to sorrow because of the judgment. But God is making a promise before the judgment even comes. He says, at the end of this, there's going to be a time for rejoicing when I'm going to call all the women to lead Judah in rejoicing and shout for joy and the exulting with triumph. Israel. Why? Verse 15. The Lord has taken away his judgments against you. He's taken it away. Now, spiritually, we know that that took place on the cross. That's the reason it could happen. But it hasn't happened physically yet, has it? Because who's facing physical judgments worse than anyone else in the world right now? Israel. And there's good reason. Because I already talked about that. They're the most secular nation on the earth. They're people that are rebelling against God. They want nothing to do with God, just like the rest of society today. And so God's going to judge them. So has that judgment been taken away yet? Nope. But there will come a time. And that's what gives us hope. The hope that we have in Jesus Christ is not just that spiritually he's taken away our sin, but physically he's going to take away the judgments too. And that day is coming. We have that to look forward to. He says, his judgments against you have been cleared away. Your enemies have been cleared away. The King of Israel, the Lord, the new King, the Lord, here's the first big promise. God will live with you. Now that was promised other places, wasn't it? Emmanuel, God with us. This is what all Israel's waiting for. They're waiting for God to come and live with them. That's what the Messiah is. God living in the midst of us. Because if he's with us, in the middle of us, he's not just up there on a throne. He's here with us. He'll protect us because he's with us. See, a good king lives with his people. Jesus will live with his people. He will live in the middle of them, not away from them. He's in their midst. You will fear no disaster anymore. You will have no fear of any kind of disaster because God will be with them. That we have that to look forward to. We will have no fear of any disaster. Now, do we have fear of disaster today? Spiritually, I don't need to fear any disaster, do I? Because there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Jesus Christ, and I don't have to worry about the devil. Do I have to worry about the devil? No. I don't have to worry about the devil. I don't have any fear of him because I know that the Lord is with me. He has won the victory over the devil, so I do not need to fear him. Some Christians are living their lives afraid of the devil. Don't be afraid of the devil. Just resist him. That's all. Just resist him. You have the power to resist the devil, and he will, what? Flee from you. Okay, do you believe that? Do you believe that? Okay, I'm starting to wonder. If you really believe something, you say, yes, I don't have to fear the devil, I just resist him. Okay? So don't live your life thinking you have to fear the devil behind every book and every corner. Okay? You don't. Jesus has won the victory. Jesus, okay. I have victory over the devil. I don't need to fear him. But do I need to fear physical disaster? Can physical disaster come upon you? Yes, absolutely. Has God ever promised you it won't? No. In fact, God's promised me he will bring it. Oh. Hasn't he? Oh. What did he say about persecution? Famine? Yeah, he said it's all coming, okay? But it can't take away my faith. Wow. So why am I afraid of it? You don't need to be. It's coming, all right? So God's going to bring it. God often brings difficulty. Ooh. God brings trouble. Yes. God brings persecution. By the way, the church grows in persecution, right? That's when it grows the fastest. Your faith grows in persecution. It does not grow in complacency. It does not grow in peace. Okay, when there's nothing happening, there's nothing happening. All right? You need something happening to point you to Jesus. We need it because we're still weak. All right? So when we have that happening in our lives, it points us to Jesus and we trust in Jesus. So we don't quote to ourselves a verse like this that says, I don't need to fear disaster. God's promised there won't be any disaster. No, you just misread the verse. See? That's the problem. People put these kind of verses up on their walls and see, nope, I'm a Christian, so nothing's ever going to happen to me. That's called prosperity, gospel, lie. Okay, that's a lie. All right? So don't get sucked into a lie. And it's easy to get sucked into this because there's so many people teaching this. As soon as you get saved, all your troubles disappear. No, you get saved, all the troubles start. Because the troubles start to point you to Jesus. That you're not tied to this world. This is not your home. This is not where you live. This is not where your wealth is. You need to turn away from that and turn to Jesus. So as soon as you get attached to it, God's going to cause trouble there. Or even before you get attached to it, God's going to cause trouble there. Okay? Because He's more interested in your growing faith in Him. So, rejoice, O daughter of Zion, because when this happens, when the kingdom comes on the day of the Lord, then, physically, there will be no more disaster. In that day it will be said to Jerusalem, do not be afraid. Notice it says, in that day it will be said. Because he couldn't say it yet, because what was about to happen in Jerusalem? Disaster. Okay? Disaster was coming. But he says, there's going to be a day when you will be able to say, no more disaster. That's hard to believe for Jerusalem. It's been all about disaster. So do not be afraid, O Zion. Do not let your hands fall limp. You ever see your kids do that? Go do your homework. Oh. Go clean your room. Oh. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do it. I'm too tired. I'm too tired. Maybe your husband still says it. I'm too tired. I still say it. He says, no, in that day, Jerusalem will not say that. Their hands won't hang from being worn out. They'll be excited about doing something for God. The Lord your God is in your midst, a victorious warrior. Or literally, mighty to save. That's where we get that song. Mighty to save. He is a warrior. What is he fighting about? To save me. He fought to save me. That's pretty awesome. He fought against what? Sin and death. And the devil. And he won. He won the victory. That doesn't take a weak God. That doesn't take a Messiah that just kind of walks around peacefully. No, that took a warrior, and that's what Jesus did. He's mighty to save. And do you think you were easy to save? So some people think, yeah, saving me was a piece of cake. That was easy. No, it was tough. Okay, but my parents were saved, so obviously no. It has nothing to do with it. Okay, every salvation is a miracle. Every one. So don't ever assume. Never assume anything. Okay, you think, well, yeah, these people are Christians, so naturally that one will. No, never assume. Every one is a miracle. So the fact that I'm saved is a complete miracle of God. God fought for me. All right? Jesus was a mighty warrior to save me. It wasn't me, because I wouldn't have done that. I would have, no way. But the Lord, that warrior, lives in the middle of us. He's going to physically. Right now he does spiritually. And what will he do? Okay, he told us to rejoice. Here's the interesting contrast. He told the daughters, the women, to rejoice, right? Israel's going to rejoice so all the women can go out there and dance and sing. And they aren't the leaders, are they? No, they're the servants. So they're portraying a different side of God, aren't they? Isn't that neat how we have that benefit from God of portraying different sides of God? The men portray this side and the women portray this side. And the men aren't so good at portraying that side. That's just the way it is. Okay, so the women were rejoicing, but now it says God rejoices. You ever think about God rejoicing over you? He does. Spiritually, right now, but physically then. Not yet. Not yet. Okay? Don't get all excited thinking that God physically rejoices about you right now. Well, He doesn't, but He will. He will. Okay, it's not over yet. Right? Time for the party hasn't come yet. Okay, that's coming. There's a party in heaven, but there's going to be a party on earth. The angels rejoice over one sinner that repents, right? How long does that last? Never stops. And it builds. Okay, we think, they rejoice for a week and then they forget about it. No. No, it keeps building because when the kingdom comes to earth, physically the kingdom comes to earth, then the party really starts. Okay? So that rejoicing in intensity keeps building until the time when the warrior king comes and rejoices here on the earth. Well, how rejoicing is it going to be? Well, it says here, He will exult over you with joy. He will be quiet in His love. What does that mean? I thought He was rejoicing. Well, have you ever held a little baby when you had some time on your hands and the baby was actually good for a while? I love this. Okay, what's the greatest is when you can sit on the couch, sit back with the baby leaning over your shoulder, resting, and you're just quiet. And this word actually means refresh. Who's being refreshed? Both. Both. So God exalts over us and quiets us, refreshes us in His love as a father with a baby. That's both sides of things, okay? So don't always think that God's always the exuberant shouting part. He's also the quiet, refreshing relationship love, too. Both. And that's what He says He's going to do. He's going to refresh us. He will rejoice over you with shouts of joy. Literally, that means sing. He will sing over you. He's not singing yet. See? Not singing yet. Why not? Time and place. Right? Time and place. When will He sing over me? When it's done. When it's all done. I will gather those who grieve about the appointed feast. All those people that were exiled and long ways away, they were grieving. Why are they grieving? Because there's a feast they couldn't come to. It was time for all the feasts. We look at the feasts in the law as negative things. No, they weren't negative things to God. They're positive things. The feast of booths, that's camping with your family. That's what that was. You build a little tent thing out of sticks, and you go live there for that time with your family in the middle of Jerusalem to rejoice with the people of God. And the people of Israel that were in exile couldn't do that because they had to be in Jerusalem. All the other feasts, they couldn't do it. So they grieved over them. God says there's going to be a time when people won't grieve anymore over the feasts. Why not? Because they'll be there. And I'll be there. We'll be together. We'll understand the meaning of the feasts. He's going to bring them back. Not because they're law, because they're fun. That's why. Because they point to our relationship. So that's coming back. And they aren't going to grieve anymore. And the reproach of exile is a burden on them. it won't be anymore. Behold, I'm going to deal at that time with all your oppressors. I will save the lame. I will gather the outcast. I will turn their shame into praise and renown, fame in all the earth. In all the earth. The people all over the world are going to think, that's where the king is. That's where the king is. Jerusalem. I want to go to Jerusalem where his people are. Israel will be famous. At that time I will bring you in, even at the time when I gather you together. Indeed, I will give you renown and praise among all the peoples of the earth. Like, that's not happened yet. If you're one of these people that tries to say that all of this has already taken place, you're not reading this very well, because, like, Israel is not a place where the entire world looks to and says, yeah, that's it. They're the great people of God. I want to go be there. No, that's not exactly. What's the world saying instead? That they're the losers, doing everything wrong, nuke them. So this has not taken place yet. Still got something to look forward to. When is this going to take place? He tells us when. Verse 20. When I restore your fortunes before your eyes, says the Lord. So this is going to happen, he says, when I do it. Right in front of you. I'm going to do it. Is Israel going to all of a sudden come up with the answers to all their problems? No. Is some great man going to come in and write just the right agreement so that everybody agrees on how to take care of this? And no. In fact, that's what they think happens at the beginning of the tribulation, isn't it? When the false Messiah comes in and makes an agreement. God says, no, that's not how it's going to happen. Here's how it's going to happen. I'm going to do it. I'm going to restore Israel completely. See, God doesn't do anything 50%. He doesn't even do anything 80%. He does it 100%. This is how you know when something is from God. Because sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking that this has got to be from God because it's pretty good. It's like almost cool. So it must be God. No, if it's almost cool, you probably did it. If you had to manipulate this thing or that thing to get it, that wasn't God. Okay? When God does something, he just does it, and it's 100%. That's how he does things. And that's what he's going to do for Judah. And we get told this, so we have this to look forward to. We can see this happen. Now I'm kind of hoping I see this happen from heaven. And then I come back with the Lord to be a part of it all. That would be awesome. But I'm not going to tell God how to do that. See, he'll figure that out. So, when will he do it? I don't know. He doesn't put a year on this. He doesn't put a month on this. He doesn't put a day on it. He just said, who's going to do it? He's going to do it. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you that we can trust you. Help us to trust you. You've given us every evidence that you're faithful and that you do what you say. We just need to believe it. So help us to seek after you, to not be afraid, not to tell you how to do things, but to accept how you are doing things. And let us lean on you and lean on each other as a church. That we would trust you for all things, and that we will grow in our understanding of your word and our faith in you and our love for you. Use us during this week to encourage each other and to bring the gospel to people who've never heard it before. And draw us closer to yourself. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.